On this week's episode of the WNP podcast, is this the best tight end class in NFL history? Stay tuned. Episode 166 of the We're Not Professionals podcast. I'm your host, Mike Mitchelson, and joining me today, as always, my co-host, Chase Crawshaw. Chase, how are you on this lovely Tuesday afternoon?
I am swell, thank you for asking. Now, I wonder if you can hear that ping from Discord on the soundboard. Do you know?
I did not hear it, no.
Beautiful, because I muted myself when I muted, so I wanted to make sure, because we normally use Skype, but now we're on Discord. Not a sponsor, but yeah, so I'm doing well. I'm doing better than I was the last couple of days, but now I'm, just back to normal Chase, chilling, excited to talk to some tight ends. How about you?
Normal Chase sucks, though.
Yeah, kick rocks.
I am doing fantastic, and not only are we talking some fantastic tight ends in this upcoming draft class, but we're going to be talking about a lot of moves taking place in the NFL right now. If you're not aware, free agency hasn't officially started. That officially opens up tomorrow, March 15th. You're probably listening to it March 15th or later. However, there's the old tampering window, and we have, over 100 intentioned signings, basically. So it's been a wild ride these past 2 days, and we're going to be talking a lot about that as well.
Exciting stuff.
All right, well, let's just hop right into it. I know we usually banter a little bit more, but it's going to be a long show if we don't start on it now, because a lot of names to talk about, some big trades to talk about as well. Let's start with the biggest trade of them all, as we saw the Chicago Bears trade the first overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft to the Carolina Panthers. In return, the Bears get DJ Moore, the 9th pick in the draft, a second-round pick in 2023, a first-round pick in 2024, and a second-round pick in 2025. An absolute haul for the Bears, while the Panthers, they trade up to 1 to assumingly go get their quarterback.
So here's what I don't understand about this trade is I saw a report that apparently the Panthers are willing to listen to offers on their pick if someone likes a quarterback. If you're trading up for the first overall pick, how are you not dead set on who you're taking? Like, how are you just trading up for that pick and still having question marks or looking to move down? Makes zero sense. It becomes a lose-lose situation for you at that point, because now you still don't know what you're doing. Maybe you figure out who you like, and then maybe they're not worth first overall anymore. So stupid on the Panthers end there. And what it's also stupid is they traded away 2 draft picks from this class, and sure, they move up to get one. And if they take literally any of the quarterbacks, their only good receiving option, DJ Moore, is just out the window. So you're kind of setting this team up to fail pretty heavily, because the defense still isn't anything that's going to like completely knock your socks off. And this offense, is Deontay Foreman the running back 1 still? I don't know. This seems like a horrible trade for the Panthers, because they're going to suck next year. They're going to be bad. That pick's going to be high. I don't know why they would do it. It's a good win for the Bears. Sucks that a team in the Lions division gets to make out this way, but reality is I don't see how this doesn't work out in the Bears' favor.
Yeah, it's a huge win for the Bears. They get a huge haul. However, if the Panthers lock up a quarterback and he pans out, it's a win-win. There's 3, in my opinion, 3 really good quarterbacks that have just great potential, and I'm super, super eager to get my hands on if I'm the likes of the Panthers. I think 2 are going to be better than the other right off the rip, but either or, I agree with you. Their pick is going to be very high next year. It's not a good team. There's not any weapons around him. They do have an offensive line, which is nice. They got old Ike Ekwonu, who they just drafted in the first round last year, who I absolutely adore. But Chase, I don't know if you saw, back in 2021, Justin Fields, he went 10th or 11th. I don't really remember. But the
12, I thought.
But the Panthers, they went out and drafted J.C. Horn, number 9, which I still like J.C. Horn a lot. He hasn't had the success that I think people were hoping for right off the rip. But if they just drafted Justin Fields there rather than wanting to go with Sam Darnold, they would have Justin Fields with Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson was still on the team at the time as well. Like, that is putting, one, Justin Fields in a much better place to succeed versus what the Bears have done. And then, secondly, they wouldn't need to trade this haul for a quarterback because they'd already have one.
Yeah, the whole hindsight 2020 thing, that's the case here. I know we both had Justin Fields ranked pretty high. Pretty sure you had him ranked above me, which would be unsurprising with how much you like him. But he probably should have went earlier than he did. I was a bit shocked he fell as much as he did. So that would have been a really good spot for him to go. I agree. I at the time, like, fair enough if you wanted to give Sam Darnold one more shot because there were some glimpses of hope when he was in New York. But reality was he was never that great of a quarterback. He was never that unbelievable of a prospect. So you probably should have went and got the high trade, high upside quarterback that Justin Fields was. And who knows, maybe he would have taken off. Maybe he would have flopped. I don't know. But I think that kind of what you're saying, they would be in a way different boat where they wouldn't put themselves in this kind of like do or die type of situation, for lack of a better term. Because if this doesn't work out, if your quarterback flops, you don't have a high pick next year, so you're missing out on elite talent. Like, you're setting yourself up for failure and set yourself back big time if this quarterback doesn't work out. So again, hindsight 2020. Now you just have to look forward. You have to find out who's got the best chance of succeeding at the NFL level for you with that first overall pick, and hoping that they can just hit home runs later on in the draft. Like that. That's kind of the hope now, right?
Yeah, and then when you're looking at the Bears, they traded down to 9. I know a lot of people were hoping or saying that the lowest they should trade down is to 4 so that they could still get Will Anderson or potentially Jalen Carter. And Jalen Carter he got arrested, and you know the story. If you've been paying attention to football, you know the story. People are talking about Jalen Carter falling. A report came out today that many NFL front offices believe Jalen Carter will be available at 9 which is where the Bears pick, which I think would be unreal for the Bears to move all the way back to 9, get the haul that they did, and still get potentially the number 1 player in the draft when it comes to just on field. Now, the Bears have had a lot of communication with Georgia's coaching staff, really trying to dig into Jalen Carter, the person, but the player, if he falls number 9 to the Bears, I don't think you can get a better trade here.
No, you really can. That becomes the draft day steal, and obviously you'll see what happens down the road. But if that is the case, basically, if he does fall, no matter where he falls, just football ability, that is the draft day steal. Hopefully that what he's going through is it's an unfortunate situation, what he did, and he should have responded in a different way. But hopefully he learns, moves on, and he can become a better person and do good things outside of the football field, and then on the football field, hopefully he can develop and help out an organization that way too. And if that's the case, the Bears get him at that spot. Like that is just the ultimate win-win for them.
Yeah, it'd be unreal. Well, let's talk about some other trades we got here. Starting Jalen Ramsey going to the Miami Dolphins for Hunter Long and a 3rd. I think when this trade came out, everyone was thinking, what the hell? Why didn't my team do that?
Yeah, I was. You want me to keep going, or do you want to just leave this in silence and let me think about it?
You can expand. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, I very much would have liked my team to do that, because you're trading, a late day 2 pick, which there's still value with 3rd round picks. Obviously, every single round in the NFL draft there's value because you need a lot of players on a football roster to make immediate impact. So you're gonna find impact guys in the 3rd round as long as you don't drop the ball. But even though I think Jalen Ramsey is a bit overrated as a corner, you're still not finding a Jalen Ramsey corner more often than not really in any spot in the draft. So to trade a legitimate depth tight end in that 3rd round pick for a cornerback who, regardless of how good he is, even if he's a bit overrated, he's still a very good corner, and teams look to not throw his way. To get that for a 3rd round pick, like I don't know why more teams didn't do that. I don't know why the Lions wouldn't have done that. Give up that pick. Maybe if it's a culture thing, then whatever. But giving up that third round pick and giving up freaking, Shane Zylstra or something in return. Like that's an obvious slam dunk for me. I don't know.
Yeah, it just makes me think that, man, no one in the NFL has actual value outside of quarterbacks and draft picks, because we see an elite corner go for a third. We see a pretty solid tight end, although him being injury prone. Darren Waller, he gets dealt for a third today. Darren Waller going to the Giants, the third going back to Vegas. Like, not a lot of positions outside of quarterback and actual draft picks have that high value.
Yeah, it is fair because of how the careers of these non-quarterbacks go. If you have a good quarterback, they're, hopefully they can play 15, 20 years. Basically, every other position, you're seeing them last, like a lot shorter. Offensive line, maybe they last a bit longer, but in terms of running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, those guys break down a little more often. And when you're looking at the defensive side of the ball, pass rushers slow down pretty quickly. Interior D linemen, sometimes they get sustained, but linebackers, defensive backs, they all start slowing down quicker than quarterbacks. So I can understand wanting to give up that better price for a quarterback or for trading up as much as you want for a draft pick because of that age. But at the end of the day, if you get 5 years of people choosing to not target one side of the field because of Jalen Ramsey's there, then that's significantly worth significantly more than a third, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Chase, you've been a big fan of Darren Waller as well. What do you think about this acquisition to the Giants? I know a lot of people had some faith in the Giants tight end core. Now you add a guy who's got an immense ceiling.
Yeah, he has a great ceiling in terms of play on the field and his height because he's a very large guy, but he's got a ton of talent, and I'm happy he's kind of figured out, himself, gone on the right path, has overcome his issues, and has become a great leader on the field and a great football player, or a great leader football player on the field and a great leader off the field as well. That's what I'm trying to say. So I think that this is a really nice deal for the Giants, moving on from essentially this became Kadarius Toney for Darren Waller because this is the pick they got for Kadarius Toney. So to give up a wide receiver that just wasn't fitting for what you were going for anymore, like he just didn't want to be there. You guys didn't want him there, and get a tight end who has a ton of skill, who instantly becomes the number one option in that passing game. I think that is another very good value, even though he is a bit older and he might have a little less, run in his game. It might be on a shorter track. The Giants think they're there. They're paying Daniel Jones. They were just made a playoff appearance. They think they're in that contending window. So if that's the case, Darren Waller makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, got to be a little bit careful with the injuries. We know Darren Waller, he's gotten beat up quite a bit, but if he can stay healthy, I mean, if that whole Giants team can stay healthy, then who knows? Maybe they can be that contender that they're trying to be. But there's some injury history for sure. Chase, let's not talk about Stephon Gilmore getting dealt to the Cowboys. He signed with the Colts after a tremendous stint with the Patriots. Didn't really work out in Indy. He now goes to the Cowboys. Does this rejuvenate his career, or are the Cowboys really just bringing this guy in for kind of a little more upside depth?
I mean, I think he's going to play more than depth. He's obviously not going to be the number one. They're going to leave that to Diggs. And what I think you're going to see is this is going to be a bit of a stat inflation type of move for Stephon Gilmore, because I think he's going to get targeted a bit more because at the end of the day, Diggs has the ability to go up and nab the ball. He has wide receiver type hands. So maybe teams are a little more weary to throw to him, especially with a quarterback that might not have, like Patrick Mahomes level, so where they want to try to mitigate that risk. And that leaves, if your quarterback number two is Stephon Gilmore, someone who still, I say, has at least some talent, and he has a good history of being very talented. I think we're going to see more pass deflections, more interceptions, more tackles, all this. So on paper, I think he's going to look good and maybe earn himself more money down the road. But I don't think he's going to up his talent level by any means. He's still getting older. He's just going to be in a different position where he's kind of not the guy and having to guard the number one receivers all the time. He'll get the number two options. He'll get a little more targets towards those number two options and should have an easier job taking care of them.
Mm-hmm. All right, finally, not a big trade, but one I want to get your reaction on. Jonnu Smith headed over to the Falcons. The Patriots get a 7th-round pick back. Not big value going back and forth, but the Falcons eager to get Jonnu Smith and his $11 million against the cap. on the roster.
Doesn't really make much sense to me. Like at the end of the day, he's a tight end too that's going to be used more in the blocking game than in the receiving game. So to pay that to pay him that dollar amount, the draft pick's nothing, obviously. That really doesn't matter. But the cap that you're taking on, that's what I really don't understand, because you got Kyle Pitts coming back, and he's basically just like a wide receiver playing tight end. So he lines up a ton in the slot, split out wide. Still lines up on the line too. Still lines up in traditional tight end spots here and there too. So he's not going to lose those reps. It's just, I think maybe a little more often you'll see him outside, and John was just going to kind of alleviate him having to play that traditional tight end role. That's about all I see out of this. So is that worth $11 million? I'm going to say no.
Yeah, the cap is a little high, that's for sure. But let's move on to some big signings. Free agency is upon us, and it's been great so far. I've been digging it. Let's start with, I think, the biggest quarterback movement we've seen so far, and probably for the offseason, except for maybe if Aaron Rodgers finally makes a decision, which he will be on the Pat McAfee show at 1 p.m. on March 15th. So if you're listening before March 15th, 1 p.m., then go check out the Pat McAfee show at 1. Either or, though.
Word.
Let's now talk about Derek Carr. He heads to the Saints while the Raiders replace him with Jimmy Garoppolo. Let's talk about Carr first. What do you think is going to happen with him on the Saints? Is this a good fit? All that.
I do think it's a good fit, because he's not going to some drastically different offense where he's going to have to worry about playing a more mobile style game. Like, he's going to an offense he's kind of ran his whole NFL career, which is, quicker passes. He might get a little more RPO action, but it's going to be more of, 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds max in the pocket, throwing the ball, finding guys, 8 to 10 yards downfield, having a guy like Michael Thomas hopefully be healthy, who was at one time the NFL reception leader all time in a season. So if you got him healthy, he's going to be a good option for kind of what he's looking for. And they'll have Evan Kamara, who's going to be available for those dump off passes too. So in terms of what's going to be coming for Derek Carr's passing game, makes a lot of sense. In terms for what the Saints are looking for, I think it makes sense as well, because you're not going out, you're not paying, all this draft capital to go up get a QB. I don't think you're not overpaying for a guy like Daniel Jones, who didn't hit the market, but if he did, you don't have to worry about that. I think Derek Carr still is a competent NFL quarterback very much. I think the fit just makes sense.
Yeah, I think that Derek Carr can have some fun in this offense if we see players like Michael Thomas stay healthy. We see Alvin Kamara actually on the field, which, there's questions about that with all the legal action impending. But we see Jawan Johnson, the tight end. He signs back for a 2-year deal. And we know Chris Olave, he was an absolute star in his rookie year. So Derek Carr, if he's able to play in this offense that has all those weapons, I think it could be a lot of fun. And it's definitely going to be the Saints' best quarterback since Drew Brees has left. They do bring back Jameis Winston on a 1-year deal, max value of only $8 million. So there's your backup, I would have to assume. And yeah, who knows what the Saints can do? But let's not talk about the Raiders, because I've got some family members that are big fans of the Raiders, and they're trying to hype me up about this Jimmy Garoppolo signing, and I don't know. I'm not really seeing it. I don't think Garoppolo's an upgrade. I don't even think he's a lateral movement.
I think he's more lateral than you think he is. Is he an improvement? No, but I'd say it's lateral, if not maybe a very teeny downgrade. I think you're going to see the same thing that you saw with the Raiders last year. I don't think much changes. They're trading away Darren Waller, which is a very, dominant player in that offense. So I'm going to assume they're going to draft a tight end, but as of right now, Foster Moreau's the guy there. They go out and sign Jacoby Myers, spoiler alert. So that's a good wide receiver 2 option to have, of course, paired with Devontae Adams. And Josh Jacobs is returning too. So that offense, it's going to be the same thing as it is this year. And really, at that point, if you're hoping for this team to kind of revitalize themselves, rejuvenate, you just got to look for a couple more players step up offensively, stay healthy, see if it's a good fit with Jimmy Garoppolo and Devontae Adams, and then also find this defense led by Max Crosby kind of step back up. We need Max Crosby to have a defensive player of the year contending type of season in order to help kind of carry that defense. Make it so that passing game's got a little more fear for the opponents, because you always know Max Crosby kind of breathing down your neck, and maybe at that point it's going to force quicker throws, it's going to force turnovers, it's going to force sacks, all that type of stuff. So offensively, I really don't think it changes much. You're still gonna have to rely on every other piece, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to win you games.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Regardless of Jimmy Garoppolo or Derek Carr, we saw how the team played under McDaniels last year, and it wasn't good. So I think your biggest issue is the coach, and will continue to be the biggest issue because Josh McDaniels is notorious for only having a good stint in the NFL when he was cheating. So
Fair.
if you didn't hear about that, go ahead, look it up. With the Broncos, Broncos players came out. I think it was Brandon Marshall, maybe his podcast. They were talking about how he was cheating, and that's the only reason they started 6-0. But when looking at Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo, one, I don't think the Jimmy Garoppolo Josh McDaniels connection is like a real thing. I just don't think that he's going to come in and be a so much better quarterback because he's playing under McDaniels. Shanahan, much better coach. Secondly, when I look at the two, when you compare the two, Jimmy Garoppolo is more turnover prone. He's got a higher interception percentage. When you look at passing yards per game, it's not even close. Derek Carr blows him out of the water, over 50 yards more per game. So I just don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is the guy. I mean, I think Brock Purdy's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Shocker. There's a reason they brought in Trey Lance, because Jimmy Garoppolo is not that guy. Jimmy's not going to bring you to a playoff game, and he's not going to win you a playoff game. That's for damn sure.
He's not going to carry your team. You can win with him. Like we've seen it in the past. The Niners have gotten to that point with him. So
let me ask you this:
you certainly can. Okay, I'm listening.
Look at that San Francisco defense, and tell me the Raiders are even remotely close.
That's not even close to what I'm trying to say here. I'm just saying that a team that's in a good situation can still win with him. He's not going to elevate your team. I'm agree with you on that aspect, but you can win with him. The Raiders aren't going to, because they're not the 49ers from that year. The 49ers that year were just a star-studded roster, and they were this last year as well, which is why they had so much success with Brock Purdy at quarterback. Yeah, Purdy played well, but at the end of the day, if he doesn't have all those options offensively and defensively around him, like, they're not getting anything done. So in that aspect, yeah, he's not going to really change much for the Raiders, but if the Raiders can improve themselves around him, then they're good enough. He's good enough in order to kind of make that push.
And then another question is, who's the Raiders' backup? Because Jimmy Garoppolo is not playing a full season. That's for damn sure.
I'm going to assume they're going to go out and draft one of these quarterbacks. Maybe not one of the high ones, but maybe they like Hendon Hooker. Maybe they go later on with a Max Duggan, or maybe Tanner McKee's available. Maybe they go Jake Haener. I think we're seeing one of those guys go to the Raiders.
Oh, you just made Landon's dreams come true by saying Hendon Hooker.
Yes, and Max Duggan, since he's the next Justin Herbert.
Yeah, but he thinks Hendon Hooker is Anthony Richardson with a little bit less athleticism.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Landon. Yeah, I'm sorry, buddy, but it's just not even close.
Hendon Hooker's also older than me. Like, I'm old.
You are old. Holy hell.
And Hendon Hooker's older than me. All right. Well, let's talk about some more signings here. I guess we can stick with quarterbacks. You mentioned Daniel Jones. Obviously, he signs with his boys, the Giants. It was a little rich for my taste, but they think he's the guy, so they brought him back.
Too much money for a guy that this year was probably his best year as a pro, and he still didn't have like 20 passing touchdowns, if not mistaken. Like, he didn't do anything incredible this year. He just did good enough where the rest of the team helped him out too. I really think it's more of coaching going on that team than it is any sort of quarterback play. So I guess if you can replicate this season, maybe help him correct a couple things, then you're back to contending, and you have a better option in the receiving game, like a Darren Waller. I think that's going to help. I think they probably go look for a legitimate receiver in the draft class too. So all those types of things, it should help. But Daniel Jones isn't the guy to elevate your offense. It's a completely different style of Jimmy Garoppolo, where it's just like he's kind of there. He's not going to change anything for you, except he might throw a couple more interceptions. So I just don't think he's the dude. I don't see how this one ages too well.
100% agree. Three more. You got Mike White headed to Miami to put a little pressure on old Tua. You got Andy Dalton going to the Panthers. Assuming if they go Anthony Richardson, Andy Dalton will probably be the guy to start. And then Taylor Heineke going over to the Atlanta Falcons. That's an interesting one because we know that Desmond Ritter's there. I'm curious to see how that plays out. I'm guessing it's going to be a camp battle. And that is if they don't try to readdress quarterback in this draft.
Well, we'll start with the Falcons, and that's what you just mentioned. I just want to say I do love all three of these signings, actually. But for the Falcons, they've already announced that, or not announced, but the offseason plans is that Desmond Ridder is the starter. So they're not like actively going to look out for replacements. So don't expect them to draft somebody unless someone completely falls into their lap. So right now, Ritter's going to be the guy, and Heineke's a very good backup option in case things go wrong, in case there's injury. He's someone that can seamlessly go in there and still do his best to help your team win. And then when you're looking at the other two options, Mike White going down to Miami, I think that's a very good safety option because he's played well when he's needed to. He's maybe overachieved from what his true abilities are sometimes, and you've kind of seen him regress to what you would expect for that type of player and have some pretty bad looks too. But if Tua does have to go down, his fifth-year option was picked up, Tua. But if the injuries keep being a problem, and I hope to God they're not because it's scary stuff dealing with those head injuries. But if they are, and he's got to go in, that's a very nice option that you can, again, kind of seamlessly transition to where I don't think it's going to change your team very much. And then Andy Dalton on the Panthers. Right now, obviously, they're QB1. That makes sense. It does. I think whoever they go with at quarterback will still end up being the starter by the end of the year. But if it is Anthony Richardson, I think he would benefit from just watching how Andy Dalton carries himself as a pro, seeing what he does, maybe 3 or 4 games, and then kind of move on from there. But any of the other guys, even what are their names? I'm struggling here. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, any of those guys, I think would start over him. And who knows? Maybe they trade up to 1 to draft Will Anderson or something, and they get Hendon Hooker in the second round. I don't know. At that point, I think Hendon Hooker would sit behind Andy Dalton for a similar type thing like Anthony Richardson. So expect Andy Dalton to probably get a little more play than those other 2 quarterbacks, but I do like that signing just in terms of getting that veteran presence in that room.
All right, Chase, well, let's try to wrap up free agency. Why don't you talk about the Lions, what they did, what did you like, what didn't you like, and then maybe 1 or 2 guys outside of the Lions that you saw signed and you liked the move.
For sure. So obviously, as you just said, we're going to start with the Lions. And I love the Cameron Sutton deal. I think that's a very good price for somebody who's been a very solid, reliable cornerback in this league for some time. They've been very busy in the corner market, if you guys have not seen. But Cameron Sutton's the one that kind of headlines that there. And it makes sense. It's someone that he's the number 1 quarterback coming into the team. It kind of takes the pressure off of having to draft an elite cornerback in the draft, or what's considered an elite cornerback based on draft capital. It kind of broadens your options a little more when it comes to that draft time because you don't have so many glaring holes anymore. I think he's going to come in, play a very strong role. I still think, kind of like how it was this year, all the cornerbacks are going to get targeted on the Lions. Cameron Sutton's not, the premier shutdown corner of the league, so he's still going to get targeted, especially going against number 1 receivers. But he's going to do a better job than what we were seeing from Jerry Jacobs and AJ Parker. Those guys played well when needed. Jeff Okudah was playing well at times when needed, or already had a tough year. So he's going to do better than all they did. But there's definitely going to still be targets going that way. So hopefully he can just go up, grab a couple balls, a couple pass deflections, have a good year. I think he's got a good chance, and the fit just makes a lot of sense. Outside of that, a couple other signings did happen, but I'm really happy with the guys they brought back. Anzalone, he's a very hated player by Lions fans, but it's very clear that he is kind of the leader of that defense, and he is loved by the coaching staff. So to bring him back at that price, I've got absolutely zero problem with it. I think it makes sense. Getting Bugs back too is a guy that I really like because he played a very nice, defensive role when needed. Not some elite player, but he played a pretty good role. So I think that he's another leader on that back end that's really going to help out. Outside of that, when we start looking at different teams, we saw Allen Lazard just recently. He got signed to the Jets. The only reason I like this one is because it makes it more of an incentive for Aaron Rodgers to get out of Green Bay so I can get him out of the division. I think the signing makes no sense for the Jets. You've already got way better options. So he's going to come and be your wide receiver 3. Whatever, that's fine. But I think that in terms of getting him out of our division, that's a good move. Trying to think of the other one that I had in mind that I just completely lost track of. Hold on, let me look back at my phone. Regardless, like that's one I like just specifically because he's gonna get out of the division. And I don't know, I can't find the other one that I had. I thought I had it on my phone, but I'm not just finding it anymore. So I apologize.
Okay, I'm going to go with my 2 favorite signings outside of Cincy to start, and we'll go to the Chicago Bears, talk about linebacker, but no, not Tremaine Edmonds. Tremaine Edmonds gets a massive contract, but rather TJ Edwards. I think TJ Edwards is a very underrated linebacker. He was the number 9 ranked linebacker from PFF, and they signed him to 3 years, only $19.5 million. When you look at their duo now with Edmonds and Edwards, they're making about $24 million per year versus Roquan, who's making $20 million per year. So would you rather have the 2? Would you rather have just one in Roquan? I like Roquan a lot, but he was not the same player this year with the Ravens that he was with the Bears. Tremaine Edmonds really picked up his play recently as well, so really like what the Bears did there. And then secondly, I want to go to Tennessee. I hate Tennessee. I never like to praise them, but getting Andre Dillard as a solid tackle to replace Taylor Lewan, who they did release, I think that's a good deal. I mean, anyone you can get from this Eagles team seems to be the right choice as of right now. And the Eagles, they're losing a lot of players, and it's going to be hard for them to rebound against the teams like the Cowboys and the Giants who are really trying to load up. Now, when it comes to the Bengals, the only person they bring back up to this point, Jermaine Pratt, love it. That's the biggest name that I had on my wish list for the Bengals because I knew Jesse Bates was already out. So,
and that was the guy that I couldn't remember. I really like that move for the Falcons. I think it's a great price for them.
Yeah, so Jermaine Pratt, absolutely love to see him back. Jesse Bates, he goes over to the Falcons, signs a big deal. I think it's around $16 million per year. The Bengals,
4 years, about $64 million.
Yeah, Bengals weren't going to be able to afford that with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase all coming up. I think Jermaine Pratt at 3 years for $21 million is an absolute steal when you see some of these other guys, what they're making. I mean, Anzalone got 3 years at $18 million, so an extra mil per year for Jermaine Pratt. I'll take that all day. But then we see Von Bell and Samaje Perine leave as well. Von Bell goes over to Carolina. Samaje Perine goes over to Denver. I'm okay with it. I would have liked to see Von Bell back. We definitely need to address safety now. We've got Dax Hill on one side. I'm not confident on the other side. It needs to be addressed, so we'll see what they do down the line. But so far, super underwhelming. All right, let's now talk tight ends. I got a little notification from Adobe Audition. I thought it was closing the podcast down, but no, we're good.
That would have been a mess.
Yeah, I would not have been happy. But let's now talk about our 2023 NFL tight end draft class. We're going to talk about 8 guys here, Chase. And now this is a fantastic tight end class. And Chase, before we actually hop into talking about our top 8, I was curious because I don't remember if it was last show or if it was just off air. We did talk about how many guys do you have first round grades on out of the quarterback, running backs, wide receivers. I know I had 8. I believe you said you had 11. Is that correct?
For which position again? Tight ends?
For everyone in the class. You said...
Oh, okay. Yeah, coming into it, I had 9 total.
9 total first round grades. I had...
But yeah, between those 3 positions.
I had 8. What are you at now?
I am at 10.
10. Okay. Only 1 first round grade on a tight end.
And I do want to say I probably had 10 or 11 when we talked about it first, but I made some adjustments where it didn't really change the rankings for these other positions, but like the grading scale moved some guys down to just like second round picks.
Okay. So I go from 8 with quarterback, running back, wide receiver to 12 after the tight ends.
Okay. Okay, well, that's excessive.
And I can't wait to talk about them. So let's just talk about them. We'll go our top 8. You go ahead, 1 through 8. I'll go my 1 through 8, and we'll see what happens.
All right, number 1, I have Darnell Washington from Georgia. Number 2, I have Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. Number 3, I have Zach Kuntz, I believe it is pronounced, from Old Dominion. Number 4, I have Dalton Kincaid from Utah. Number 5, I have Luke Musgrave from, it's Oregon State, right? Yeah, it's Oregon State. Number 6, Jaleel Billingsley from Texas. Number 7, Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State. And then number 8, Will Mallory from Miami.
Yikes. You're missing the best guy. Okay, maybe not. Maybe not the best guy. I've got Dalton Kincaid as my number 1 out of old Utah. Number 2.
I called that, by the way.
Number 2, my absolute favorite tight end in this draft class, Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Number 3, Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame. Number 4, Darnell Washington out of Georgia. Those are all my first-round grade tight ends. Then Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. Number 5, Tucker Kraft, number 6 out of South Dakota State. Will Mallory, number 7 out of Miami. And Zach Kuntz, number 8 out of Old Dominion.
So, who did you not have? Jaleel Billingsley?
Nope.
That's the only difference?
Yep.
Okay.
Jaleel and Sam Laporta.
If it makes you feel better, Sam Laporta is my number 9 and is still a day 2 grade.
If it makes you feel better, Jaleel Billingsley is actually my number 8, but he is undraftable on my scale. That's why I have Zach Kuntz as my number 8.
It's that guy.
Yes, okay, Jaleel Billingsley, undraftable. And we'll talk about that when we get to him. But let's start. We can start with your number 1, because I'm pretty sure, what do you have, Kincaid? Do you have Kincaid 4 or 3?
I've got Dalton Kincaid at number 4.
Okay, so we both have each other's number 1s at number 4. So we can start with your 1 in Darnell Washington.
Sure, sounds good. So aside from the obvious, he's just a massive human being who is incredibly athletic. I really don't have like any holes in his game, and at the combine he tested very well. He is someone I have a measurable rating, and I graded him above 100% for my measurable rating just because of his size compared to his athleticism. It was just awesome. The only knock, or knack, whatever you want to say, no, knock, not knack. The only knock on him is that he wasn't a hyper productive tight end, but that's just because he was playing behind the best college football player there was in these last couple of years. So only so much you can do at that point. But like he's just elite all around. Otherwise, in my opinion, he's a great blocker. He's strong route running. He has great hands. He's incredibly athletic. And he's just this day 1 impact type of tight end who I think he's scheme diverse. No matter where he goes, you can use him, primarily as in like on the line, or maybe even as like a fullback, like a halfback, like H-back type hybrid thing. You could use him out wide. You could use him in the slot. You can kind of use him wherever, just depending on what you want to do with him, and that's just so incredibly useful.
Yeah, and Chase, I got to disagree with you when you say he's a great blocker, because I think he's an exceptional blocker.
Okay.
I personally think he is the number 1 tight end when it comes to that. I know Michael Mayer, he is fantastic as well, and a lot of people will say Michael Mayer is that number 1 tight end when it comes to the blocking game. However, I prefer Darnell Washington. And now, even though he's my number 4, I still have a first grade on him. I think he is awesome. My notes on him, just huge. An absolute monster. Really good movement for his size. But with that being said, with the size that he does stand, I do see some general stiffness in his game. Also, there's some times where, maybe he's a little bit out of energy. Maybe the fatigue's kicking in with having to move so much mass at a time at this high of a level as well. So, hey, I like Darnell Washington a lot. Huge catch radius. He's going to be fantastic in the red zone. But I think when it comes to my preference in tight end, I want to find a guy that is good in the blocking game, but can also make plays, similar to a Travis Kelce, a Mark Andrews. And while Darnell Washington can, the guys I have above him, I feel can make those a little bit more often. So still think Darnold's great. Have him first round. Agree with you. He's going to be a day one starter.
I'm trying to cut you off this whole time. You won't let me cut you off. You're a weenie. But just to go back, I didn't read my notes word for word. I have him as an elite blocker, and he is my highest grade blocker in this draft class. Like, I agree with you there. Mm-hmm. And I think he is, other than maybe Michael Mayer is the other one that compares to him. Again, my top 4, I guess. Like, he's just by far and above the greater blocker than the other guys, even the ones that you're saying. So to say like good blocker compared to athleticism, I think his just excellence in the blocking game on top of his still athleticism and his route running and his ability to catch the ball, track the ball downfield, and be a threat in the red zone. I think it's almost like a can't miss level type tight end in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't get there. I've got all of these guys in the 20 to 32 range. Maybe it's just because I'm not a huge tight end guy in general. I do not think he's close to Kyle Pitts when it comes to his value coming into the draft. And I wasn't necessarily comparing athleticism to blocking, but rather playmaking to blocking when it comes to that. And I think Darnold can do it, but the other guys do it at a more often level, I guess, more consistent level. So that was the argument there, not the athleticism part. But I mean, go look at a highlight reel, Darnell Washington. You see this guy hurdling people, like, he's awesome. Love Darnell Washington. I'm excited to see what he can do at the next level.
Hopefully he's a Lion. Hopefully he falls to day 2 and he's a Lion.
That would be something, eh? All right.
That'd be awesome.
Let's talk about Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. He is my number 1. This is a guy I didn't want to be my number 1. He's a good player, but all the hype, I was like, I don't really know if I buy this hype. And you put on the film, and I think he does. He's a smooth athlete that can create separation and be a playmaker at the tight end position. Has really good ability to make things happen with the ball in his hands, which is huge for tight ends. I mean, look at what separates the Travis Kelce's, the Mark Andrews, the George Kittles from the Dawson Knoxes and the Dallas Goddards, guys that are praised to be, those top 5, maybe top 8 tight ends, but just aren't even close to these elite tight ends. It's the ability to make things happen after the catch. I think Dalton Kincaid's got that. I was surprised how well he did in the blocking game. Now, he's not exceptional. I wouldn't say he's even great, but I think he is definitely able to be utilized in the blocking game. He's good at chipping, and I think if he's got to hold his own against a linebacker or a corner or a safety, that's fine. Don't match him up against an edge, please. I don't think that would turn out well. But good hands. Sorry, I was reading someone else there. Decent route runner. Why wasn't he tight end 1 when it comes to Utah? That's my biggest question mark on him. Is I'm a little bit worried on coming into the season, he wasn't tight end 1. Why? What's the issue? You look at the tape, and it looks like he's a fantastic tight end that can get it done, especially at the college level. So why wasn't he? Was there something else that I'm missing? Was it a bad coaching decision? That's my biggest concern.
I don't think you're really missing anything. I think it's a bad coaching decision because I still have him graded very highly. Like sometimes coaches are just a little oblivious to certain things. They have biases towards certain players, towards certain abilities, tendencies, and maybe it's unfair. And we often see guys in college who they don't enter the year as a starter. They go through their senior year without playing meaningful snaps, and all of a sudden they just figure it out and they dominate and they go to the NFL and have good careers. I'm not too worried about the situations that you're mentioning with Dalton Kincaid. I'm really not. When you're talking about his route running, I have him graded as the best route runner in this tight end class. I think he's better than like Gut or whatever he said. I think he's very strong at it. I think he is someone who's going to be able to create separation, in the receiving game. Just he's going to break off routes incredibly well, especially being lined up against linebackers or safety. I think he's going to dominate them. And he does have that, diversity, especially because of his size and athleticism, to be able to kind of move around, in different formations. Maybe not someone as scheme diverse as Darnell Washington is for me, but someone that's still has that legitimate flexibility to kind of use them as needed. But I think he is someone that if he goes in the first round, I'm not gonna be like, oh, that's a horrible draft pick. I'm just gonna say there's better value. But I think that he's another one of these guys who should be a day one type of impact, and I really think that we've got quite a few of those in this draft class.
And also, I hate to say this, I hate doing comparisons, especially comparisons to absolute legends. That being said, I've got 2 on this list, one being Dalton Kincaid. I said baby Kelsey ? Because just the way that he played reminded me a lot of Travis Kelce. I don't think he's going to be as good as Travis Kelce because personally, I think when it's all said and done, Travis Kelce will be the number 2, only behind Tony Gonzalez. But play style wise, potentially.
Play style, sure, but one thing that helps Kelsey is they're the same weight, and Kelsey's got 2 inches on him, so that helps quite a bit too. And he's more athletic.
All right, Chase, you're number 2.
My number 2, Michael Mayer. Just a kind of prototypical, like classic traditional tight end. Maybe not the prototypical like fantasy option at tight end, but just what an NFL team wants, because he's got the right build in order to allow himself to still have some legitimate receiving game on top of being someone who's useful in the blocking game. Isn't some speedster, but watching it on tape compared to what you saw at the combine, it's about what I expected, and I still think he's got enough speed to be able to match up against the linebackers and the safeties, and still be able to beat them. Maybe not every single route he runs, but I still think he will. And speaking of routes, I think he does run routes pretty well. I think he's got a nice, sturdy set of hands, and then in the blocking game, he just excels. He's very strong at it. He's just someone who is a legitimate every down tight end, and those are very valuable, especially ones that can still catch the ball too, because you'll see some every down tight ends that are like basically just extra offensive linemen, in some run heavy schemes, or you'll see tight ends who play a bunch of snaps and are more targeted than used as a blocker. But like Michael Mayer is the type of guy that I just wouldn't want to take off the field as long as he's got the stamina to play. Like keep him playing, because he's going to be useful in legitimately every single situation that you need. So is he going to have the offensive upside that a lot of these guys have in terms of his numbers? No. Is he going to be someone that you're be clamoring for in fantasy? Probably not. But when it comes to what you're seeing on the football field, and this is what we're doing here, we're rating guys for the NFL, I think he's just everything you want.
Yeah, I got Michael Mayer number 3, and we basically have the same analysis. It just position-wise and grade-wise, it's a little bit different. But I agree. He's a super talented, classic NFL tight end. He's not going to be a guy that's going to wow you with his athleticism, wow you with his route running or run after the catch, but he's an extra lineman that is going to be the biggest insurance option for the quarterback. He's going to be fantastic in the red zone. I like him a lot. Similar to what I said about Darnell Washington, there's a little bit of stiffness in his game, but when it comes to just the things he does outside of athleticism, all of them are at least a B+. Like, he excels in a lot of different areas. Now, here's where that other comparison comes in, because I said, baby Gronk, ? Because Gronk, very similar, a little bit stiffness, wasn't the fastest guy, but he always made huge catches in the biggest moments in games, as well. He's a fantastic blocker. So those are my 2 comparisons, and only 2 comparisons I'm going to be making all show, but I saw that one as well.
That's the only comparison I'm going to make, because that's kind of been his nickname for the last 2 years in terms of kind of the scouting community and the dynasty and Devy community in terms of fantasy football, is Baby Gronk, because it's the exact same style of game. So is he going to have the success that Gronk did? Probably not, because it's hard to just have that type of success. But like when you're talking about how he plays on the field, it's almost identical.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's now talk about my number 2, that being Sam Laporta out of Iowa. And man, Iowa has a great ability to really push out NFL caliber tight ends. Like I said, I am a huge fan of Sam Laporta. He's my favorite tight end in this draft class. I think the reason for that is just everything he brings to the table when it comes to his athleticism, the smoothness he brings to his game. I personally have him as the best route runner out of all these tight ends over Dalton Kincaid. Part of that reason is he was Iowa's biggest weapon, and Iowa consistently used him on the perimeter. How many tight ends do you see line up on the perimeter of the field and be that number one guy that the quarterback's always looking for? Not that often. So Sam Laporta, he does that. I think he's a pretty good blocker. Now, I don't think he's the level of Mayer and Darnell Washington, but similarly how I was talking to Deuce Vaughn in our running back show is Laporta has that dog in him, dude. Like, he is going to fly down the field, get to that second level, and hit you in the mouth. Now, is there times where he misses? Sure. But this dude wants to block. He wants to hit you, and I love that out of him as well. Good hands. I think he has a lot of upside after the catch with his athleticism. I'm just excited to see what he can do because I think he's going to be a second-round tight end, and he potentially could be the best one out of this class.
Mike, if it makes you feel any better, Sam Laporta just moved up to my tight end. What is it? I gotta look for it. My tight end 7 because of a typo I made in my grading system where I gave him too low of a grade that I just realized. So I adjusted. Didn't notice at the time. So now he's up there for me. So Will Mallory gets pushed out, goes down to number 9, and Sam Laporta's up to number 7. So at least he's in my top 8 for you. That make you happy?
You know, it makes me happy because I'm just going to take credit that it was my analysis of it that made you push him up. Not a typo. No, I'm taking credit.
It was not. It was not. I was looking at it and I was like, oh, that's one whole number down than it should be. And I adjusted. It's like, oh, that makes a pretty solid difference. So, yeah, he just moved up a couple spots. But as you were kind of going from there, here's kind of my analysis on him. Despite, I don't want to say despite. I don't know why the hell I said despite, but he is definitely more of a receiving threat tight end than he is going to be a blocking tight end. Great athleticism, but when you talk about college production, it's just not a ton of it's there. So you can say a lot there that for a lot of the tight ends in this class too. There's not a ton of college production, so it's going to be a concern for everybody. But when you look at just his ability to play, he's someone that's going to be awesome in the receiving game. He's got great fantasy upside because he's a strong athlete. I think he is a very good route runner. I think he's got good hands. He can break tackles. I really do like what he brings as a pass catching option. It's just to spend a first round pick on a guy that I don't think is going to really help you as a blocker. That's a little tough for me. So day 2, it's someone that can still come in and be that receiving option. Maybe compare him with a blocking tight end. I think that's a good value.
Yeah, I think you undervalue his blocking ability a little bit, and then also college production wise. Last year, not 2022-3 season, but the 2021-2 season, he led the Big Ten in receiving yards for tight ends, but wasn't selected as the top tight end in the Big Ten for some reason. So I think he's got a little bit more college production than you think as well. But I mean, this is a guy I'm just going to clamor for this whole draft process because I absolutely love him. He showed off at the combine, and he's going to be fantastic. I can already feel it.
Even when I had him at the grade I did, I still think he's going to be a good tight end. I don't think he's going to be fantastic level, but I think he's going to be, he's a very good tight end. We're finally going to see some relevant tight ends in the NFL. Guys that you can really trust in fantasy too for the first time in a while. I'm excited.
Oh, and I meant to say this on our very first prospect preview, our quarterbacks, but I forgot until now. Don't ever give a measurable stat with some of these guys or measurable prediction with some of these guys because, Graham's going to put that in the takes tracker and, you might just be blabbering and, overestimate someone a little bit. And then sure enough, there it is, bad take. And you're like, I mean, that's not exactly what I was aiming for.
Yeah, Graham takes our things a little too loosely, puts them in the take tracker. And some things are so hard to just put a qualitative, value on it's still tough. Graham, not every single word spoken from either one of us need to go in there.
Yeah, just be careful a little bit. All right, Chase, who's your number 3?
My number 3, Zach Kuntz, Old Dominion. And let me get back to my rankings page because I was just adjusting, or I was adjusting my total rankings page, trying to fix the Laporta fudge up. So now I'm back to my specific tight end grade. So Zach Kuntz, Old Dominion. Kind of my notes. He's got great size for receiving tight end. Moves very well. Possesses a nice set of hands with a strong ability to go up for a ball, thanks to someone who I think has his elite jumping ability. Tested well at the combine and is probably the riser of the draft in terms of this tight end class. I think we're going to see him going higher in mock drafts than we have in the last couple of weeks. I think he's super intriguing, and maybe he still goes a little bit lower than where I have him ranked. I have him as an early day 2 guy. I'd be very comfortable taking him there just because I like everything he's got going for him. I just, some people might argue, Old Dominion, he's not playing anywhere special. They play relatively easy schedule, so maybe he just looks good there. But in terms of just how he tested and just how he looks as a football player, I could see this being a great value.
Yeah, I've got Kuntz where I think he'll probably go in the NFL draft, which is the 3rd round. He is officially my number 9, but we'll talk about Jaleel Billingsley and why Zach Kuntz actually slips into my number 8 spot. He's extremely athletic and a huge mismatch factor downfield, speed, size, vert, catch radius. All of that is just unreal. However, this guy really, I don't want to say fears, but he fears contact. Like when he's downfield battling with a safety or battling with a linebacker, he doesn't win the physical matchups. He's also a very poor blocker. I just worry at the next level, if you're not going to be embracing that physical contact, you're really going to have some trouble making it as a tight end in the league. And that's one thing that I'm a little bit worried about with Zach Kuntz, as well as he has some injury history in his young playing career. So those two things together worries me a little bit. Again, still have a 3rd round grade on him. Still think he's absolutely worth taking a shot on because of the athleticism and the size. You could have something awesome there, but not having the physicality, I don't know if that translates well in the NFL.
I don't wholeheartedly agree with you on this whole physicality thing. I don't think he's scared of it by any means. There better guys at it, sure, but I don't think he's scared of it. I think that's just a little bit of a stretch to say. So I'm not too concerned. At the end of the day, the only question mark is just like it. A lot of these guys, not just Zach Kuntz, but a lot of these guys in the strong class, it's betting on the intangibles because you don't see a ton of college tight end production. Some places you do, some places you don't, and it's really just betting on everything that they've got going for them in terms of size, athleticism, and how they look in the blocking game outside of the receiving game. So I think he's a better blocker than you're giving him credit for as well. Is he elite? No, but I think he's better than you're giving him credit for. So it's going to be still taking a chance, like taking a bet on a guy, hoping that he works out. But for me, it's a guy who's worth taking a good shot on.
Yeah, we shall see indeed. Well, my number 3 and my number 4 are gone. So do I just jump to my number 5, or do you want to go with potentially your number 4?
No, my top 4 are gone now too. Darnell Washington, Michael Mayer, Zach Kuntz, and Dalton Kincaid.
Okay, so let's just move to my number 5 first because we haven't talked. Actually, we did talk about Zach. Go to your number 5. Why not? Go to your number 5.
Who's your number 5?
My number 5 is Luke Musgrave.
That's what I thought. It's my number 5 as well. So our number 5,
perfect.
Silly Goose. God, that was just a mess. But when talking about Luke Musgrave, love the size. I love the height. Good weight distribution, and like he moves great for that size too. Like he really does. To me he looks really smooth running routes. They got length. I think he's going to do well in contested catch situations. Someone who's got a real chance of being a menace in the red zone. He can go out and jump for the ball. Excuse me. The only issue for me is I would like to see, him improve in the blocking game, and just like everyone else who I mentioned, the college production, it's just so low. So those are the only two concerns. So get better in the blocking game, and we'll see, what happens when you get more reps as a receiver. And I think it's someone who's got potential to be a nice value.
Yeah, I agree with you. A standout athlete, really nice size on him as well. I think he could be a true threat as an offensively inclined tight end. I think he's got really good upside, but I think he definitely needs to work on his consistency in the blocking game as well as his ability to move after the catch. I think there's some inconsistency there as well where he just doesn't get it done always. So I agree. I got a second round grade on him. I think he's a good little player, but definitely a guy that I think might need more. I don't know if he's a day one starter is what I should say.
Maybe not. I think he's probably better off starting, like, because he needs to improve in that blocking, that you don't want to just throw him to the wolves. Probably better off going somewhere that maybe has a more established tight end. Maybe it's somebody that's older. Maybe it's a team that's going to run 2 tight end sets more often. Might be a better place for him, and just kind of let him really improve on when he gets to the NFL level. Let him show that he's someone that can be trusted, not just the receiving game, but someone that can maybe get some use in the run game, get some use lining up at the edge of the line. If that all happens, he's got a real opportunity to do something good.
For sure does. Is Tucker Kraft your number 6?
Boom, boom, boom. Let me double check to make sure. No, Jaleel Billingsley is.
Okay, let's talk about Jaleel then.
Where the hell is Tucker Kraft on my list?
Did he slide out?
He's number 8. That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk Jaleel Billingsley.
Yeah, let's do it.
You're gonna bring out the hate.
It's not necessarily hate. It's the facts, but sure.
I got a feeling what your facts are going to be, and this is the guy I have the most notes on of anybody. So it's obviously going to be a big question. His lack of college production, his need to transfer out of Alabama, and his teeny tininess. All these things, very much understand. He weighed in under 220 pounds at the combine, which is shocking that he didn't try to bulk up even more, even if he sacrificed some speed. It's really surprising me, but when it comes to what he does as a receiver, he moves incredibly well. He breaks tackles at a rate that I like. He's got a good set of hands. He's a smooth route runner. Yards after the catch, I think he does a pretty good job too. I think he's just someone that he does some pretty solid damage with the ball in his hands. But when it comes to the blocking game, when it comes to his level strength, obviously they're a bit lacking. When it comes to the production, it's low. So I can understand some concerns. I think he's someone who would be great in a 2 tight end set where you have a better blocker and he can maybe be used as a more of a move tight end, or maybe you can even throw him in the slot and make him just a bigger bodied receiver. I think that makes more sense because I really wouldn't want to put him out there as a blocker. Maybe a downfield blocker where you're engaging with a cornerback or a safety, that's fine, but trying to engage with like a D lineman, he's going to get run over.
So I think Jaleel Billingsley is a good talent. The only film I was able to watch on him that I could find was him as a 19-year-old sophomore. And based on his 19-year-old sophomore film, he comes out as top of round 3, which should tell you. Like, this guy had a tremendous trajectory after his sophomore season with Alabama, and that was that exceptional Alabama team that had Waddle, had Devonta Smith. But my worries aren't his play. My worries aren't his size. My biggest worry is the character, because it's quite a disappointing story. There's a lot of hope for this guy as the next great tight end at the college level, a top prospect. I know a lot of people very early, but especially in Devy leagues, he was being drafted in the first round after that sophomore season that he had. Sophomore season, he saw limited use, but on that national championship team, he really started to pick up his usage later on and looked great. He was too talented to keep off the field. However, off-field issues kept him reaching from that true potential that he had. Saban called him out on multiple occasions, talking not coming in, not training like one should to be that next level. And let's see what I have here. What seemed to be a punch in the gut, just about thinking, okay. Saban quoted that it was a punch in the gut, not seeing him come in and really play his ass off. And Jaleel Billingsley just thought he deserved reps based on his talent alone, not his work ethic. That led to big disagreements between him and that Alabama coaching staff. That's why we see him leave, head over to Texas. We didn't see him play much at Texas. Why? He had a 6-game suspension. So there's a lot of off-field issues here with this guy's motivation to actually get down and work, according to everything that's played out so far. Maybe the attitude has completely changed, which would be awesome. But with everything that I see up to this point, he's got some serious off-field issues. And I think with these, there's a chance we don't even see him play in the NFL.
We're gonna see him play because at the end of the day, talent always gets an opportunity unless it's something so bad you can't come back from. And even when something bad you can't come back from, we still see them get paid a fully guaranteed contract. So at the end of the day, he's gonna get the opportunity because of the talent. What happens from there, like we'll see. And I don't think he's gonna fail because of talent. And is he gonna grow up and mature? Like it is a fair question. I don't know. We're gonna see. I try not to do unless like the character is so bad where they're like doing just unspeakable things. I try not to knock guys too much for their character because at the end of the day, they're kids. All you can do is be optimistic that they're going to grow up and get over it. So it's worth taking the chance that he can get over it. So it's not something I factor too much in my grades.
This is a guy that I think could very well have an Isaiah Wilson type of career. Isaiah Wilson, drafted in the first round by the Tennessee Titans, didn't ever play for him because he came into camp overweight, didn't want to work. He just took his bag and ran with it. I think there's that potential with the things that I heard out of Alabama. Like, if you're not going to work for Nick Saban, who are you going to work for? I don't know.
It's fair enough. It's fair enough.
All right, let's now go to my number 6, that being Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State. He is your number 8, so we can talk about him together. He's my last tight end that has a day to grade. And he's a very solid, well-rounded tight end. Not the fastest or smoothest athlete, but can do a lot of things well. I think he's good in pass protection and run blocking, good hands, and I think his run after the catch is a little underrated. I think he's actually pretty solid at that. I think routes, he needs to improve there, and then overall playmaking also needs to be rounded off. But overall, I think he's a solid tight end.
Basically, when it comes to my grading scale, like he's just good across the board.
Yeah.
Good measurables, good speed, good athleticism, good break tackle, good strength, good hands, good route running, like good enough for me. He's maybe when it comes to going up and getting a ball, he can improve a little bit, but good at blocking, just good. And those are the type of tight ends that you do like to have because those are the ones that usually have longer careers unless the receiving tight end type guys turn into elite options. They turn into more of Travis Kelce's. Like obviously Travis Kelce's high end, but like if you start getting legitimate production, then you're going to be just fine. But you look at a guy like Robert Tonyan, who he had some production, but at the end of the day, he only produced because he had Aaron Rodgers. And once Aaron Rodgers stopped targeting him, he fell off. He was very out of favor, didn't really use in the blocking game. So this is a guy who's got a very strong chance at sticking in the NFL and having a solid career because he's just good enough at everything.
Yeah, 100% agree. I believe that caps off your 1 through 8. Is that correct?
Let me double check and make sure. Yeah, after the adjustment, yeah.
So my last player is Will Mallory, who is the guy that just slid out of your rankings. I like Will Mallory a lot, and he's got a lot of speed, a lot of smoothness to his game. However, similarly to Kuntz, he's less physical and needs to improve on his blocking game. However, I think the routes, the yards after the catch are very consistently good. I think that there is potential for tight end 1 upside. However, I think he's going to be more realistically a great tight end 2.
Yeah, I think he can be a team's tight end 1 on a team like, what's a good option? On a team like kind of what the Falcons do, like what they've been trying to do with Kyle Pitts. Obviously, they struggle some year, but where they want to be more of the receiving guy, they're going to have less guys, clogging the offensive line, more guys as receiving options. I think in those types of offenses, he's got good tight end 1 upside because he's got a very, just nice combination for his build and his athleticism. It's something that it's very very, very, very good going for him. And then when it comes to the blocking game, like he's willing to do it. He's not some fiend, but like he's willing to go out there and do what he has to do. Once the ball's in his hands, I love what he does in open space. I think he's just like I really don't think there's much room for him to grow as a receiver. I think he's kind of there. He just if he can get better at blocking, that's great. And if he can improve on his traits and make them more elite as a receiver, then he's got some awesome, stat type of upside. When it comes to the fantasy game and when it comes to just getting a contract because of his numbers, I think that the upside is legitimately there.
100% agreed. And we just said that about the number 9 ranked tight end for Chase and the number 8 ranked tight end for me. So kind of just shows you where this tight end class sits right now. A lot of talent in this one. There's a couple other guys down the board that I think could be serviceable as well. Brenton Strange, I really like his game. He doesn't make it into my top 8. He's my number 10. And there was barely any college production there from him. But I think this is a guy that could make some movement in the NFL if he lands at the right spot. But that's going to do it for our tight end rankings. Chase, very quickly before we end the show, I forgot to talk about it before we hopped into our tight end rankings, but Austin Ekeler, he's available to now seek a trade. The Chargers said, yeah, go ahead, go seek for a trade. And then Aaron Rodgers, obviously the saga with the New York Jets. We see the Jets going out and listening to Rodgers' demands, bringing in the likes of Alan Lazard. What do you think about those two stories?
So the Ekeler one kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't really expecting that. The Rodgers one, it was kind of building up for the last couple of weeks, so that's not too surprising. So I want to focus more on the Ekeler one. Excuse me, gotta clear my throat. All right, now I can speak again. But when it comes to the Austin Ekeler one, I think that he is going to be a pretty hot commodity, a wanted asset, obviously for the right price, because no one's going to want to give up a first-round pick for him. But when it comes to just like teams actually wanting him, he's a very useful player. I would love for the Lions to have him, especially if they don't see DeAndre Swift as a long-term option. I think right now the Lions are in a very, very legitimate contention window where they can go on and make a run. And I think he fits very well what they want to do with the Lions and giving Jared Goff another option. I think that'd be great. So really any team that is looking for someone who is going to be a elite receiving tight end, or not tight end, elite receiving running back. Too much tight end talk this episode. And on top of still being a good runner with the ball too, it makes sense to go out and get him. I would be fine if a team giving up, up to a third round pick for him. Really, it's a strong running back class. So you're going to be able to find replacements. So maybe you don't want to give up too much. So I think I could see him going for a fourth if he does get moved. Anybody giving up more than a third though is probably too much.
Hey, maybe the Bengals go out and get him. I mean, they're in a contending window.
Are they?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head his contract, so it might not be the best idea because I'm pretty sure he got extended last year, 2 years ago.
From what I understand, he does. I'm gonna look it up real quick to make sure. But from what I was reading on Twitter, he does not have a very large cap hit.
Ooh, that'd be nice for the Bengals, for sure.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and finish your conversation about him. I'll pull it up on Spot Track, let you know.
All right, I wanted to move quickly to the Aaron Rodgers thing. I really wanted to root for the Jets. I love Garrett Wilson. You guys know he was my wide receiver 1 last year. Breece Hall was my running back 1. Absolutely love them. Want to root for them. However, this Aaron Rodgers nonsense is really getting me angry. Why are you catering to a washed quarterback that, eventually is going to go into the Hall of Fame, but at this point, he's washed. He would rather spend a week in darkness and smoke whatever he gets off the Amazon tree. But, come on. Don't bring in Randall Cobb. Don't bring in Mercedes Lewis. That would just be stupid. All right. Austin Ekeler contract?
So he'd have a 6.25 cap hit this season.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think they're paying Mixon right now like $11 million. Get his numbers off the books, bring in Ekeler.
Yeah, so I think it makes sense for teams that are in that legitimate, competing window. And really, if you're a Bengals level team, I think that's where it's worth giving up a 30. Because even though there might be some running backs you want, because we've seen the very strong history of cheap running back deals going to teams that end up winning Super Bowls. But I think that Eckler's good enough where he's going to be. I don't want to say be the exception, but he's going to be a chain moving piece. That's the right words I'm going to want to use. He's going to be a chain moving piece where the Bengals already have an elite offense and they can get even better with an Austin Eckler.
Mm-hmm. It would be a lot of fun. All right, well, that's going to do it for the show. I want to thank you so much for coming out and giving it a listen. A little bit longer of a show. Had to talk about some free agency. Obviously, this fantastic tight end class. Next week, we're doing offensive line and then any other big free agent moves that occur up to that point we'll be talking about as well. If you want to stay up to date with what we do, you can follow us on Twitter at WNP Sports Pod. That's again on Twitter at WNP Sports Pod. We also have a Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, which I got to figure out the freaking password of the TikTok. I legitimately can't find it for some reason. You can follow us there as well and get more great content from us. If you are listening on YouTube, if you could please give us a like, comment, subscribe. We would really appreciate it. Make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Down in the comments, let us know your top 8 tight ends in this draft class. I'd love to see it. Finally, if you're listening on a podcast platform, if you could please give us a 5-star rating and a follow. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming out. And as always, we're not professionals.